What's cracking? Welcome to Griffin and Bass. He's Griffin, I'm Bass. Before we get into everything regarding the Lions' victory over the Washington Commanders, the Spartans just laying an egg out in Seattle, and the other craziness that happened this week in the NFL, gotta remind you guys to like and subscribe everywhere you can find us. That'd be Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. We also got full episodes on YouTube and DetroitSportsNation.com. Ryan, I know you pulling some double duty this week, so we'll get right to it. The Lions did basically what we said they needed to do on Friday before the weekend. We talked about it. They needed to start fast. And despite the first drive stalling, they did indeed start pretty fast. Field goal in the second drive, a safety after the offense failed to convert deep in Washington territory, and then a 50-yard return by Khalif Raymond off of the kickoff from the safety, bringing the Lions in great territory. 4 plays later, Goff connects with Amon-Ra St. Brown. It's 12-0 in the first quarter, and they basically took it from there. Yes, Washington fought back pretty good in the third quarter, but 22-0 at halftime. Nice big fat goose egg for Washington, a big lead for the Lions, something we're not really used to seeing here in Detroit, and they were able to hold them off when it mattered, and the Lions are 1-1. Nice start.
It is a nice start, and the first half that the Lions dominated allowed for them to, I still think, kind of show their true colors in the second half, where they were getting beat. The defense was letting up. But because they played 30 minutes of almost perfect football, it afforded them that luxury to not play 30 minutes of perfect football anymore and still come away with the win. But I mean, just kind of an overall dominant win by the Lions. They led wire to wire. Even at the end of the game when the Commanders were making their comeback, they never had the ball with an opportunity to tie or take the lead. And, you know, I think that's important because it always gave you just a sense of calm, right? Doom wasn't right around the corner with what the Lions were able to do. And I give the Lions a lot of credit for this win, not because the Commanders are some great team, but because they did come out and, again, win wire to wire, dominate totally. They came out and they won by doing the things that they wanted to do, by running the ball, having this kind of short, intermediate passing game, making big plays like that, and then just responding to things they didn't do well last week. The defense didn't play well last week. It played well for at least a half, really well for at least a half this week, and it was enough to win them the game. They didn't get any type of pass rush that last week. This week, Hutch, 3 sacks in the first half. The Lions got a safety, because they got a sack real close to the goal line as well. So just kind of responding to all of that, all of the criticism that they were facing last week, and then being able to come out this week with kind of an undermanned unit and do what they did to the Commanders and just come out 1-1 was, I think, probably the best possible scenario for them.
Yeah, continuing along the lines of things that we said needed to happen or was going to happen. We did say that Hutch would get his first NFL sack in this game. It did happen. The first one I found funny because I was like, did Wentz get like half a yard running back to the line of scrimmage? I wasn't sure if it was a sack or not. And if you look at his stats, in the game, Hutch has 3 sacks, yet 2 tackles for loss. And it's like, well, that math doesn't work. But if it's a no-yard gain, it's not technically a loss either, and it's still technically a sack, so we'll go with it. Whatever. 3 sacks in the first half, fantastic. You're talking about a not full unit and stepping up. I mean, let's give a little props to the O-line replacements. I mean, you're talking about guys who need to be replaced in Jonah Jackson, Frank Ragnow, and Halapoulivaati Vaitai. Dan Skipper, Evan Brown, and Logan Stenberg, I mean, especially Dan Skipper, and I'm playing into this just for you. I know you want to talk about it, and I guess we could, but there's not enough evidence to really talk about it, so I don't know if we really should. But Dan Skipper never started an NFL game before, never played anything but tackle, going back to his days at Arkansas, and there he was at left guard. So to come out, and yeah, he allowed 1 sack, but after that first sack, really did his job and did it well, and I can't believe what we're watching offensively, where the Lions are dominating on the ground. We don't do this in Detroit. We don't have a dominant running game. Not since Barry have we had it. And even then, our line wasn't great. It was Barry dancing his way as best he possibly could. These guys are opening up holes. Swift, Williams, Amon-Ra on the end around, or jet sweep, whatever you want to call it. It was fantastic to see. I want to get used to it, but I'm so scared to get used to it, because if I get used to it and then they go back to the way that I've known this team to be for so long, I'm just going to be even more heartbroken. So I still want to be apprehensive about it. But there's so much hope in this offense that we are seeing early, even with Goff and the missed passes. He played very good. 4 touchdowns, obviously. And there are drops as well. But there are passes that are just off. They're just complete, and he's human, but they're just off. And so this offense could be even scarier if Goff was actually completely in sync on his timing when the routes with the receivers. But to put up 30-plus points in the first 2 games of the NFL season is not something that we are used to seeing from the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, if we had Lamar Jackson, it'd be insane. But we had Jared Goff. So for the offensive line in general, I gave this shout out on Beyond the Box, and I'll give it here. Hank Fraley, the offensive line coach, just bravo to him. The hat tip, like whatever you want to say. Him getting those guys ready who didn't, of course, expect to play a big role, and then needing them to play a big role when we have the number of reserves outnumbering the number of usual starters that you have on your offensive line. And he was able to get those guys ready and get them to play well. So just again, a big shout out to Hank Fraley there. And then with the Lions offense, having that next man up mentality, not only with the offensive line, right, but we knew DeAndre Swift was going to be on a pitch count. So Jamal Williams, you're already a big part of the offense. You're going to have to be a bigger part today. A guy like Reynolds, like, now we're going to really rely on you. And those guys stepped up. They came in, they made plays. Obviously, Amon-Ra St. Brown is continuing to do what he does, which is, very, like, he's just a phenomenal receiver for the Lions. And him playing really well. In the offense in general, they scored 69 points the first 2 weeks. The Lions in total scored 71, but 2 obviously came on the safety. The Lions, 69 points through 2 weeks, and they did it against, one defense that people think is going to be pretty good in the Eagles, and then another in the Commanders, who they should at least have a good pass rush. I know they didn't have Chase Young, but it should still be like a decent defense regardless. And I do think the Lions will be able to run the ball, so kind of answer your concern. I think no matter what, the Lions will be able to run the ball. Of course, they're not going to win every game. They're not going to, run the ball like this every game. But they should be able to run the ball for the majority of the season, as long as this offensive line, stays somewhat intact. And then that will only open up the things they can do in the passing game. And Goff was a lot better this week than he was last week. And I can see why people are obviously excited for the offense. You start thinking a couple weeks down the line, if this continues, you get Jameson Williams back, then what can this offense be? But for now, it was a really good game by the offense, and I was really impressed with just kind of that unit as a whole.
Yeah, and it was nice to see. It was nice to see growth away from same old Lions, and what I mean by that is Washington's coming back. Third quarter, Washington's fighting their way back. They made it 22-15. It's a one-score game, and it didn't become 40-22 Washington. And the defense did their part. Will Harris with a big pick off of Carson Wentz to stop that whole situation, where it was, pass right up the middle intended for Logan Thomas, went right through the tight end's hands, deflected off another line defender, and right into the hands of Will. It's plays like that need to keep happening, especially in crucial situations where the other team is trying to get back into it, and those rare glimpses where we are in the lead and trying to hold on, that is going to make it more and more feasible for us fans who have been so beaten down by this organization to continue to believe that this is a different era for the Detroit Lions. And so seeing that kind of stuff, and then seeing just some special players starting to come out right before our very eyes. Amon-Ra St. Brown, we're talking about a guy who 9 catches, 116 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 carries for 68 yards, including that 58-yard jet sweep where he had defensive players yelling, "Oh!" because they knew a big play was about to hit, because they did not see that coming. And we're talking about a guy now who's making history. He joins Antonio Brown and Michael Thomas as the only receivers to catch at least 8 passes in 8 consecutive games. And he's the first player in league history to have 6 straight games with at least 8 catches and a touchdown. There's no one else. It is just Amon-Ra St. Brown. And he is in his second year, 4th round pick out of USC. and literally the sky is the limit for this kid. And when Jamison Williams joins the fray, it just makes it that more dangerous. And if Hawk can get his stuff together and get back involved in the passing game, he's the odd man out right now as far as the offense is concerned, where he's not being what we thought he was going to be, a stud tight end, a top 5, top 10 tight end in the NFL as far as pass catching as well as run blocking. It just hasn't happened yet so far this year, but there's a lot of weapons now that we didn't have before, and he's got to pick his spots and make the most of it when Goff throws his way, and we just haven't seen that yet from him.
No, and he's a fine tight end. Should we have picked him 8? No, but I don't know that so many people wanted to pick him 8 when we picked him 8 anyway, right? So it's not necessarily hindsight or a pick that everyone was so hype about, and then it comes to fruition like Eric Ebron or Brandon Pettigrew or something, and you're like, oh, this guy actually stinks, and we thought he was sweet. Like, people thought he was fine. They didn't want to pick him there, and that's kind of what he's been, right? He's been a fine tight end. Not one of these guys that is justified where he was picked. He's not Gronk or Kittle. And honestly, we're not doing the show yet, but there's going to be a time when Hawkinson's contract comes up, and I don't expect the Lions to offer him top tight end money. I think it would personally be a mistake. But I think right now he's certainly a guy you can win with, and if he's your tight end for the next 10 years, it's fine from a player aspect, right? Because he's not a bad tight end, but with the money he's going to want, his production hasn't matched that yet, and he'll have games where we see him have 112 yards, and he's got 2 touchdowns and 8 catches, and he'll look really good. But no, he hasn't lived up to his billing from where he was picked, and again, he hasn't been bad, but he's just been he's been better than okay. He's a top half tight end. I still think he's probably a top 8-ish, 9-ish tight end in the NFL, but that's kind of it. And after you get past those top, 3 or 4 guys, the position really kind of starts to fall off, where I don't know that there's a lot of difference between tight end number 5 and tight end number 14. And I think that's kind of where Hawk falls into that area.
Want to give some props to some things that we were keeping an eye on going into the season. Start with Jeff Okudah. He's allowed 63 yards through 2 games. No touchdowns. We've got 15 tackles and a pass deflected. He's doing the job. The D this week, while we've been picking it apart as far as how bad that they can be, 5 sacks, 1 pick, 1 safety. They did the job. Clean game as well. We had 1 penalty, a false start on Penei Sewell. That is it. Clean game. These are the things that will continue to allow the Lions to keep winning, doing the right things, not beating yourself, that we have seen time and time again over the last so many decades of being a Lions fan. It's really nice to be able to brag about this football team. I'm just not used to it, Ryan.
No, and I don't even know that you can necessarily brag so much yet. But, it's nice to be 1-1, absolutely. And, we have Minnesota and then Seattle after that. So I would expect them to beat Seattle and be 2-2 at worst, and probably be feeling even better about ourselves than we at 1-1. I think the Lions are better than probably what I thought they were to begin the season, but it is still a long season. We'll still have to see. I still do have concerns about the defense. I know they played really good in the first half, gave up a lot of points in the second half, and through 2 weeks they've given up 64 points, or 57 I guess because of the pick 6. But 57 points through 2 weeks, still not good. It's still probably going to lose you a whole lot of games if you're giving up 28 points a game. So still a lot of work to be done on the defensive side of the ball, in my opinion. But the offense is certainly exciting, and we have that part down now. Now let's just work on trying to improve the other side.
Yeah, I'm waiting for them. I'm waiting to see them against an actual good defense. I want to see what this offense can do against a defense that is obvious top 5 in the NFL, and see where the offense stands. Because if they give up 28 points a game, but the offense is continuously dropping 35, we're still winning. Am I expecting it every time? Absolutely not. If the defense can be reined in a little bit and the offense can continue to flourish, it actually gives me a little bit of hope this team could be better than the 6-7 wins that I picked them for this year. But it is very early. It is week 2. We're already getting, Goff comparisons to Brady and stuff, and it's just all right, we need to slow down a little bit. It's a nice win. We can brag about the win, and that's what I'm doing. But let's not get ahead of ourselves when we have a whole season ahead of us still. But that's exactly what we're going to do with a little bit of overreaction Monday, Tuesday for you out there. So, Ryan, overreaction, yes or no? DeAndre Swift will be an all-pro this year.
So he's playing like one, but he also was just on the pitch count, so I'm going to say no. I don't see it for 15, 17 games. I don't think it's going to happen.
All right. With this offense, Jared Goff will be top 3 in touchdowns this year.
No way. This is absolutely an overreaction, is I guess how we're playing the game.
All right, and the last one, St. Brown. Amon-Ra St. Brown will be a top 5 wide receiver at year's end.
Like in what? Just in just the overall top 5
argument
wide receiver?
between yards, touchdowns. You want to throw receptions in there? I guess we could do that too. But he's going to be in the argument for a top 5 receiver at year's end.
I don't think he'll have a very good case for a top 5 wide receiver, so I think that's an overreaction.
He continues to get 8-9 catches for 100-plus yards and a touchdown or two. He might.
Oh, yeah, if you do that every game, then sure.
Yeah. I
think it's going to stop at some point.
We got 8 games in a row so far going back to last season and this season. So, keep the train rolling.
The wide receiver list is so stacked, though. You got Jefferson, Diggs, just guys that are playing tonight. Devontae Adams, he's 3 right there.
I know. All right.
Suspended DeAndre Hopkins.
Hutch is going to end up with over 13 sacks for the year.
No, 13's.
He got 3 this
week.
Silly
Number.
How many games we got?
Just 13 is a lot. 13's a lot. I don't think it'll be 13.
All right, and Dan Campbell going to win Coach of the Year.
No, I don't think the Lions are going to have enough wins for that.
Do they have a most improved Coach of the Year? Because, there should be. It's just, you take over a bad team and you did a good job with it and you got them to, damn near 500. You should win most improved Coach of the Year.
They don't even have a most improved player of the year. They have the comeback player of the year.
Yeah, y'all need to start copying the NBA a little bit with some of these awards. All right. Enough happy talk for us. Let's get sad. Ryan, everything I was afraid of that I talked about on this show came to fruition. So if you want to blame me out there, Spartan Nation, I'll take it. But everything that I was afraid of, and then some, happened this weekend in Seattle with Michigan State and Washington. Michael Penix destroyed us. Destroyed the secondary. There is no secondary. Ain't nobody back there playing defense. They standing around like damn mannequins. Defense was terrible. And to add on top of that, our offense was non-existent in the first half. Nothing to be spoken of. And on top of that, Washington dominated us at the line of scrimmage. Their running game was better than our running game. Their O-line was better than our O-line. Their D-line was better than our D-line. We had nothing going. I don't want to hear about fighting in the second half. I don't care. We are trying to build something here, and I'm not seeing any growth whatsoever with this defense. None from last year. All the moves in the transfer portal and bringing in Amir Speed, and I understand that we had some injuries to deal with. Xavier wasn't there. Darius wasn't there. Slade wasn't there. Big pieces. Not going to say otherwise. But Washington wasn't 100% healthy either, and they dominated us. Penix looked absolutely unstoppable in this game. Almost 400 yards in 3 quarters. Their first punt came in the final minute of the third quarter. We did nothing. 397 yards and 4 touchdowns for Penix. They absolutely dismantled us. It was 29-8 at halftime, and it wasn't even that close, Ryan.
No, it wasn't that close. It was so embarrassing, man. It's not even just the loss of it that was embarrassing, because you went on the road, a Power 5 team, and you were the underdog. If you lose, it's whatever. But lose in a game where it's back and forth, and you lose the lead late, then I'm sad. I'm not necessarily upset. But just with the way Michigan State came out, lifeless and out there making mistake after mistake, and really giving Washington all the opportunity that they needed to succeed. Even before the defense started falling apart, Michigan State had their first drive on offense. They get to about a 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3. Jarek Broussard goes the wrong way. Peyton Thorne turns around. There's nobody to play action into, and then he gets sacked. Boom, drive over. The next drive, you stop them on the goal lines. Now you have a little bit of momentum, but you're still backed up. But you didn't give up the touchdown. You didn't give up any points. you snap it, Jarek Broussard falls down, and then Washington gets points anyway. So it was just that. Mel Tucker called it death by inches. And I know he was referring to the game as a whole, but I didn't like the unpreparedness, the sloppiness that they came out with. And then as far as that defense goes, they didn't pressure at all. They didn't just not get pressure with the front four. They really didn't send any blitzes. They sent one, and then Ben Van Sumeren gets hit with the roughing the passer call on Penix because he drives him into the ground. I think it was the first drive that extended their Washington's first drive, and they eventually went down to score a touchdown. But it was embarrassing from that aspect, and just not being able to stop them, because you even think before halftime, Michigan State scores, they're down 8-22. It's 2 touchdowns. You get the ball back at halftime, and while you're not thrilled with the way the game is going, you see a path to victory, right? You're like, okay, maybe we can just calm down. We get the ball back to start the second half. Let's score. Let's go down 1 touchdown, and then it's kind of essentially a new ball game. Doesn't happen. Penix goes right down the field before the end of the first half, scores, makes it 29-8, and now you're down 3 touchdowns, and Washington, again, has all the momentum. So where now when you do come out and score in the second half, which is what Michigan State did, now you're down 2 touchdowns instead of 1, and it's just a constant uphill battle for Michigan State. And that's what I'm most disappointed by. In the secondary, we knew it wasn't good. I don't know how the hell there were so many people wide open, because you weren't blitzing anybody, so you were just trying to load up the secondary with bodies so that there wouldn't be so many wide open spots. But every time, Washington was running wide open. And I was on here, we have YouTube reels of it, so go Detroit Sports Nation, YouTube, watch our reels, watch our videos, all that stuff. They're on Instagram too, at Real Detroit Sports Nation, I think is on Instagram. I don't know, there's a fake one out there pretending to be us. But I was all on the reel saying Michigan State should be favored in this game, given all these reasons. Washington was bad last year. They're going to be bad this year. And I had to eat all of that because Michigan State ended up getting dominated by Washington. So, again, everybody, if you're coming back to say, haha, I told you so, you absolutely did. And then with Washington, where I want to give them credit is their offensive coach is not going away from what was working. They're running a whole hell of a lot of motion on their first drives, and they were scoring on all of them because Michigan State was confused and guys were getting wide open. So instead of going away from that, like poorer, lesser coaching staffs would have, right? Oh, now we got to establish the run. Now we got to do something else. Washington didn't do that. They kept with the motion. They said if it's going to confuse them, we're just going to wait until it doesn't confuse them anymore, and then we can switch up. The problem was it kept confusing the Michigan State defense, and they didn't know what to do. Washington was wide open. Penix was making all the plays that he had to. I don't know that he had to go into so many different reads, because I think for the most part, all of his reads for his first or second reads were probably open when he was dropping back to pass, and he wasn't getting pressured, not from the front four, not from any type of blitz, because Michigan State wasn't sending those. So he had all day. He got in the rhythm, and he was just super comfortable picking the defense apart. And I think that's where the game went wrong for the defense, and then the offense didn't help him either. Not being able to run the ball. Peyton Thorne, I thought he played really well. Honestly, I thought it was his best game, of course, of the season, but one of his best games, of the last 2 seasons. And it kind of just didn't matter, because as much as Michigan State, fought in the second half, they dug themselves way too big of a hole in the first half, and then still weren't able to get any stops. And that's the story of the game, and it was way more embarrassing than a regular loss would have been, right? Like it was unacceptable because of how it happened, not because it happened.
No, I hear you. And there are so many questionable situations and calls where I didn't understand why certain plays were called. Look, I'm going to always be this way, but when it is whatever and 1 yard and you are doing a running play out of the shotgun, I'm going to forever root for you to fail because you're a moron for trying to do a running play for 1 yard and you start 5 yards back. So for me, you will all, and so when it's 3rd and 1 and they do a shotgun run and it got stuffed, saw that coming all day. Why wouldn't you? We had nothing on the ground all day. And the decision to continue to throw Jarek Broussard out there, and I understand you have been of the opinion from the year starting that Broussard was the better running back to Berger. And I'm not saying he is or he isn't, but he clearly didn't have it on Saturday. And he kept getting thrown out there. So Was Berger hurt? Did I miss something where Berger got hurt? Because I could not understand continuously putting in Broussard for these big moments when you have a big, strong back in Berger that has been proving it so far this year for you. There was just so many questionable situations with Mel and the coaching staff that I just didn't understand. Yes, one of the bright spots, absolutely. Peyton Thorne, best game of this year by far. He actually looked competent as a quarterback again for the first time since last season. We found a new target with Jaden Reed not being able to be out there in Keon Coleman. Great game for Coleman in a losing effort. He was the bright spot for us far, and there really was nobody else. It was those two. Oh, and the tight end. I'm blanking on his. Was that
Barker? Daniel
yes.
Barker?
Yeah. Barker, Illinois transfer, had a nice game as well, and I hope that he is someone that we bring into the fray more often offensively. But there was just so many questionable situations and calls at Michigan State. The fact that Washington came out the gate and literally ran it down our throat to start, not passing it. They established the run game immediately against us, and I did not see that coming. Did not expect that. Obviously, all the touting we have done about Michigan State's front seven and our ability to stop the run, and that's our bread and butter and all this stuff. Well, if we can't depend on us stopping the run, Ryan, we going back to a 5-win football team this year. Because we can't stop the pass. That's not happening. And if their plan to stop the pass is to load up the box with as many guys as possible back there to stop a pass as opposed to getting pressure, we're definitely not going to be a good football team. I'm sorry. Go get pressure on the quarterback. That's apparently where our strength is, to stop the offense from the other team. And we're continuously going to be putting schemes out there where we are just sitting in zone areas and letting receivers pick us apart. None of this makes any sense to me.
It doesn't. And so we were still able to stop the run. They had less than 3 yards of carry. Their main runner, Cameron Davis, he's looking at 17 carries for 69 yards, which is 4 yards of carry, but he did have a 30-yard run. So if you take that away, he's at 16 for 39, which is just about 3 yards of carry, not even, like 2.5, which is obviously much less impressive. So for the running game, they were still able to kind of bottle them up for the most part. But it doesn't matter if these teams are just going to throw the ball all over on you. And the decision to sit back in zone was perplexing to me, especially so not bringing pressure and sitting back in zone. If you're like, hey, they're going to have to beat us through the air, this is what we're going to do. That sort of makes sense to me. I still just want to get pressure on the quarterback, like philosophically, because I think that is obviously the better way to try and rattle another team. But it doesn't matter if these guys don't know what they're doing. And if you're sitting back in zone, people are still wide open. But you got 7 guys in zone coverage. So how is that happening? Who's not doing their zone? Mel talked about people missing assignments. And I'm sure there was a lot of that. And if these guys can't play zone, go to pressure. I think from the man that they played, the very little bit of man that Michigan State played, Washington completed 14% less of their passes when Michigan State was in man versus zone. I still think it was a pretty high number, probably, but they were just having success, whatever they wanted to do through the air, and it was, it really reminisced the bad secondary games that Michigan State had last year. When you're looking at Purdue, the secondary cost them. You're looking at the Ohio State game, obviously the secondary cost them. And even in the Michigan game, they had the pick at the end, but the secondary was still getting torched. And so for Michigan State, I don't know what they have to do. I know they have to get better at identifying zones if that's the way they're going to play it, and if they don't think they have the guys to play in man, is fine, whatever. Then play zone and live with the results. But they need to get better at identifying those so that those don't happen, right? It's probably going to happen once a game. These are college kids. There's always a zone that gets misread. Somebody's running wide open. You turn on pretty much any college game between two big-time opponents, and you're just going to see that. But for it to happen consistently, for guys to be in the middle of the field wide open, it's not even like they just got, way past the defense. And, the corner thought he had safety help, and the safety thought he was doing something else. So this guy's behind everybody on the defense by 30 yards. This guy's in the middle of the field, wide open, 15 yards down the field with nobody by him. I'm sitting here yelling and my ear pods coming out. It's insane, man. And I don't understand how that happens and how it happened so often. That's the most frustrating part to me is Michigan State. They did what Michigan State wanted them to do. They dropped back and threw it. Michigan State probably thought they were going to have enough bodies, that there obviously wasn't going to be as many passes completed, that they were probably going to get some turnovers, and of course that they were going to get some pressure up front with the front four, because they knew Washington wasn't going to run. Washington didn't really try. They had 36 rushing attempts, but if they weren't up 21 points the whole game, they probably would have ran it a little bit less and still not had much success with it. And that's just frustrating. I hate every part of it. It needs to get better. I don't see it getting better this year, but if Michigan State is going to continue with this, then it needs to get better. Because if not, then I think Scotty Hazelton's out of a job at the end of the year.
And I know everyone's calling for his job there and everything, but we don't have the athletes yet in the secondary. Again, it is Mel's third year, and he's bringing in his own class, and he's trying to do what he can in the transfer portal, and we thought we addressed some of these issues. And I wasn't expecting Michigan State to literally go from the worst secondary in all of college football last year to top 25 or top 50. No. But was I hoping that we would see a significant improvement to get them to around middle of the pack secondary? Yes. And we're just not there yet, obviously. And Xavier Henderson not being in is a big loss, obviously. But to me, as far as philosophy, for a quarterback, Ryan, what bugs a quarterback more? Getting hit so hard that your ancestors feel it, or throwing a pick into coverage? I would think getting hit so hard your ancestors feel it is going to bother a quarterback more throughout the game. So get pressure. I don't care about leaving guys on an island behind me. If my 4, 5, 6 guys are getting pressure to the quarterback to make him second guess, is there someone about to hit him from behind? Does he know for sure there's no one right there, and maybe the throw is a little bit off? As opposed to giving him all sorts of time, but covering in the secondary. It doesn't make sense to me with the athletes that we have, where our strength is versus where we are obviously so very weak. None of that made any sense to what we were doing.
No, and I think even if that's your game plan coming in, when you see your front four isn't getting pressure, then adjust, because you did see the Ben Van Sumeren play work. I mean, he got penalized on it, but if you're getting pressure like that, you're obviously not going to get called for a penalty every play. So you take that one, you throw it out, and say, hey, remember, get off the quarterback. You hit him and just throw him away, I guess. Right?
Turn sideways, something.
Yeah, not so much a defender can do, but like you saw that play worked. So just do more of that, especially when the other stuff isn't working. It's not like they were sitting back in zone and they were getting picks and batted balls, and Penix had to throw underneath because just the middle of the field and deep were all covered. Like, none of that happened. So if it's not going to work anyway, you might as well try and get some type of pressure another way. But Penix was comfortable all night, and I think it stemmed from them not pressuring him like at all at first, so then he's able to get into a rhythm, and then he's just not out of that rhythm because they still weren't able to get any pressure on him. He knew what his receivers were doing. They were all on the same page, and I think the Washington offensive staff called a really good game to still confuse Michigan State and not confuse their own players, because when you get a lot of motion, you can get a lot of illegal formation. The offense isn't set, false starts, things like that, and Washington didn't have, I don't know that they had any of those. Right, there might have been a false start because that's just what happens regularly, but for the most part, I thought they were pretty disciplined. They're certainly more disciplined than we were.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe don't focus so much on going to sleep at some certain time to be caught up on the West Coast timeline. Yeah, Jesus. Just, maybe focus on trying to find a way to make the quarterback's life more difficult on the opposing team.
Just play football.
Yeah. Just play football. Nothing to really talk about on the other side. Michigan dominated UConn 59-0. I don't think I've ever seen 7 quarterbacks play before for one team. Blake Corum tied a school record, 5 touchdowns. Yeah, and McCarthy was great for the time that he was in. Nothing to talk about. They haven't played anybody yet. We'll wait and see what they do. The Big Ten schedule is starting this upcoming week. Thank God for so we can actually see Michigan against some actual talent, because I'm tired of watching them beat up junior varsity high school teams, which is exactly what Colorado State, Hawaii, and UConn are. Not throwing shade. We all book easy out-of-conference schedules. Just I'm waiting to see Michigan against a real team. And I actually am excited to see J.J. McCarthy against some competition, because I've thought for a while now that he should be the one starting instead of Cade. So I don't want to see him against us. Not after seeing what Penix did against us. I think JJ's going to smoke us. I think Ohio State's going to smoke us. Maybe Maryland. I think those are the 3 teams where there's actually a quarterback back there to smoke.
Do we play Purdue again or no?
I don't think we play Purdue this year. I'll have to take a look at the schedule for next show when we prepare for the upcoming weekend of Michigan State games as well as Detroit Lions games. But it's at least one happy note. The Lions look good against Washington. The other sad note, Michigan State looked terrible against Washington's. Completely different Washingtons, too. All right, that's going to do it. We had one happy, one sad. Hopefully next weekend we get 2 happies. So thanks for kicking it with Griffin and Bass. For Ryan Griffin, I'm Matt Bassin. As always, Wu-Tang is for the children. We'll see y'all later this week. Peace.
See you.
Hey, Ryan Griffin here. Thank you so much for watching today's episode of Griffin and Bass. Be sure to give us your thoughts in the comments below. Remember to click the bell to receive the latest notifications from DSN and subscribe for breaking news, community blogs, polls, contests, and other content.